So yeah, I'm Diego. I'm from Queen Mary, University of London, and part of the Game AI research group. This fancy logo. I'm going to be talking about general approaches to Game AI, and this is a subfield in Game AI that has been quite popular lately, and you will probably recognize a few of the things I'm going to show today. I'm going to try to give an overview of why are we doing this, and why it's something that we should all think is a nice thing. So I start with some small introduction, very short introduction to general video game AI, and then spend most of the time talking about different frameworks and research that you can do in this area, and then the applications of this particular domain, which are quite interesting, especially on the area of games. And then some future work. Okay, so going to the introduction. So we have used games as benchmarks for AI for a long time. Actually, if you just go back, you can remember probably one of the first ones that you remember is Deep Blue playing chess against Kasparov. And the reason is because, well, they are very nice frameworks, things that you can very quickly test. You can just run your AI methods on them, simulate thousands or millions of games, and try to get actually very good statistics on the kind of AI that you want to try, the methods that you want to try and develop. In the research area, probably in the last 10 years, we have been working a lot with competitions in which rather than everybody goes with their own framework and it's impossible to compare to each other, we just really have a common framework. It could be something like, for instance, Pac-Man, or a racing game, or Mario. And then you propose a framework, people create AIs for those frameworks, and then all these AIs can be compared in the same way. Therefore, this comparison is fair. And this has worked pretty well for many years, and it's still working pretty well. And the main thing that happens with these kind of approaches is that if you, for instance, want to create, and I've done that personally, create an AI for Mario, then when you start including this kind of AI heuristics. So ways of guiding your shots. Basically telling your Mario player that if you jump on top of this thing over here, you're going to get some score. If there's something that looks like a coin, you can probably take it and you will get more points. Okay? And then your method is a mix between these two things. A mix between the AI itself, which is some kind of AI star or some kind of Monte Carlo charts, and a mix of the heuristics that you are including. And that's okay in the AI case. It has a little problem, which is that, well, whatever you learn in this environment, you can automatically translate it to a different environment. You can put Mario on the wheel, the steering wheel of a car, and ask Mario that knows how to play this one to actually go and drive around. Maybe you're not interested in doing that, but actually we are. And what we are, people that's working in general video game playing, are interested in actually combining this. Having an AI that works in any game. But this same AI should be able to play Pac-Man, drive a car, and beat levels in life. And the main idea behind this is that this is an approximation of artificial general intelligence, which is some kind of AI in which you just drop the AI in an environment and it behaves intelligently, or it solves the task that has to be solved. And it could be in any game or task that are included in the framework, but it could also be in new games. So imagine that you have an AI that can play in any game, even if that game hasn't been seen before. It's a complex task, but that's something worth working on. Or doing research. Okay, so that was a very short introduction. I'm going to start mentioning a few frameworks that actually allow you to do this. Probably the first one is the GGP framework, General Game Playing. This was developed by the Stanford State Logic Group in Stanford in 2005. And the idea was to create agents that play any board game or inside a collection. Things like chess or checkers or hex, which is over here, or dominoes. And the idea was you have an agent that receives the rules of the game, and it has to reason about those rules and be able to play alternatively. There are no simultaneous games. You play, then the opponent plays, and you have 1 second to decide the action. This is the move that you're doing. And these approaches should work for any game that is included in the framework. So that was probably the first approach to general game playing. A few years later, Bellemare and a few others developed the AO, or Arcade Learning Environment, which essentially takes the Atari 2600, it's an old console that maybe some of you have seen and played, It contains lots of different real-time games, like Space Invaders. I can't remember which one is this one. Maybe you have played it before. I have. And the idea is the same. You get the screen capture of this, and you have some agent that is going to be able to play any of these games. Actually, up to 55 games in the framework. And in principle, this is, well, first thing is for real time, so basically you don't have that second to think about which is the action to make. It's not turn-based, so you have to provide an action every few milliseconds. So it's very fast-paced, it's more difficult to actually employ your time properly to reason about the environment and decide an action. Probably one of the most known works on this is this paper and work done by a group at DeepMind, which essentially uses a deep convolutional neural network to play Atari games. And it achieved considerably good results. Where I don't know if you're familiar with DeepQNet, but essentially what you have here is the screen. That screen is, you have a filter that goes to the screen, and it basically captures different features that are passed through convolutions and fully connected layers until you get at the end different actions that you can apply. And these actions are essentially the adjustments. So you have as input, you have the screen of the game, the output is the adjusted movements of the buttons that you press to actually play action. Okay. So they compare this in many games, and what you see here is the blue one is the performance, the number of these points that you get in each one of these games with the new framework, and the gray one is the performance that you got with previous linear classification. And some of them, this is the original table in the paper, but actually now these bars will be around here more or less. So very bottom, very at the bottom of the image. In many games, this is actually better already than human performance. So this AI was able to play any game, or these games better than human. So this is an example of this agent playing Iconic, or Breakout. And it's basically showing different episodes. So every episode learns a little bit more about how to play the game, and it continues doing episodes until at some point it achieves some final performance. Now this approach actually has a few issues that are worth mentioning. One of them is that it's very slow training. I believe each one of these games took about 2 weeks to be trained, and that's a lot of time to actually learn a game. If you play any game, you probably need 2 weeks to at least show some kind of competence. Also, each network is able to, you need to train even every network for each particular game. So you can train one network and that network plays on the games. So it needs to be a different, the same architecture, but it needs to be a different network train. This is a training process to actually play it. And the other thing, which is also quite relevant, is that it's exploiting the determinism of the environment. When this game is deterministic, the games in the Gale framework are deterministic, and it's been shown recently that if you have decided to change this image, this game, just by, for instance, moving the bricks up or down a few lines, the system will break. The train system breaks down. So even small changes in the game make it impossible. Quite easy. Different framework. This is one called Project Malmo. It's developed by Microsoft. And probably you have heard about the game Minecraft. So the idea is, well, first Microsoft bought Minecraft, and then after that decided to do an AI environment surrounding Minecraft. So Minecraft, you have played it, essentially you are one of these guys, and it's an open world environment, very complex, lots of different cubes. It's obviously 3D, and you have also first-person view, and it's a very complex environment. And the idea is that you can define tasks, you can define things like, for instance, build a house in this environment, and the game consists of basically building a house. And that's, well, I'm including here papers that define all these things I'm talking about, and so I guess later you can get access to the slide. But essentially you define these games with the observation that you can see, the rewards and the goals that you have to see. It's actually very simple to create agents. You just have actions like, for instance, moving or strafing. Rotation is a continuous value, so you rotate the pitch or turning. And you also have binary, like jump, crouch, attack, or use whatever thing you have. And you have also observations. You can just describe a cuboid of your environment, and you get all the cubes that are in that particular 3D shape. And you can query for what kind of object is that it's good, it's rock, and you can also have access to inventory. If you know the game, you actually have things in your inventory, and you can have an axe or a piece of metal or whatever. And in some pieces of code as simple as this, you can just create your agent and actually interact with the environment and place the game that you provide. So for instance, one of the things that you can do in Playtime is to use implement tabular Q-learning. So I don't know if you know what tabular Q-learning is. This is a reinforcement learning method that learns the value of different actions in different states. So actually, it comes with this visualization here, where the agent has to get to that threshold over here, that's the goal. And it's basically doing episode after episode, trying to learn what's the position and what are the actions that you can. So for instance, here, you have down is red, and this one is green. Okay, red means that you died because you're from the lava. So the algorithm is learning slowly that episode after episode, going down in this location, taking the action down in this state is a value. So after all, it basically builds the table with all the Q values for all the positions in the base. And I don't know if this video reaches that point. This is a longer video line, that's 6 minutes. And after that, it actually reaches it learns the whole trajectory, and it finally gets to the goal. And it takes a few minutes to train. It's a very simple scenario, but it shows kind of things that you can do. In the video some flow. Now there is something that we are working at the moment, is actually a collaboration that we're happy to be ready with Microsoft, is create a new framework on top of Malmo, which is called the multi-agent reinforcement learning Malmo, or also called Malmo. And the idea that we have here is basically to create several games that you can play in the same idea as you have, for instance, several games in Alien. And for each one of these games, you can create different tasks. So it could be one, could be, for instance, solving this problem of having to reach the goal. You could have another task with enemies, you have another task with swing with some movements are actually voided. And then you have several games and different tasks, and then there's to create an agent that plays all these games equal. And it will be the same agent that plays all these tasks, rather than as in Ale, you have to train each agent for these different tasks. It will be general in the way that you drop the agents in an environment that is able to play any of these games. So we are working on this, and it will be available in July 2018, more or less. So stay tuned to Twitter and all the Facebook means of communication, because I hope you hear about it soon. But this is future. Something we have been working for a long time in Query, and this is the work I've been doing since 2014, and also in my group, is something called VGDL, or Video Game Description Language, and the GVGI, or General Video Game AI framework. And the idea of this framework is a small framework, well, it's growing now, but it's a framework that admits definitions of games in text form. So for instance, this is the definition. I'm not going to go into detail, but we have a link here when I go later to see what is this. This essentially defines the game Sokolan. You have to push boxes into holes. That's Sokolan. So this defines the game itself, and this defines the level. And when you have this defined in the framework, this like that goes into an engine, which is written in Java. So you have these two files, goes into an engine, and the engine creates two things. It creates a game, which is going to start at that time, and a controller. And in here you can plug your AI. You have different APIs, you can plug it there, and you can play the game. And every game frame, the game is going to send you observations about the game state, and the controller is supposed to return actions every 40 milliseconds, so again it's real time, to play the game. There's no information, so these rules are not given to the agent, so the agent doesn't know how the game works. He can only play it and try to win. And the interesting thing is that, again, it's not by repetition. Like for instance, in table to learning before, you don't play the game multiple times until you learn it. You're supposed to drop the agent and play it automatically the first time. How can you do that? Well, the agent actually receives some information from the game. Not the rules, but some information of what is going on. Things like the current score, the game tick or the game frame, if the game has finished, if winning or not, where the avatar is, the position, the things that you might have collected, a different observation. And most importantly, you have something called a forward mode, which essentially allows you to simulate what could be a possible future state if you apply certain actions to the state of the world. So if you're familiar with things like Monte Carlo research, you probably know what you need to have in order to apply those calculus. These games are stochastic, so the formula is going to tell you one possible future state, and it's up to the game to actually find out if that next move is representative of what could happen. So I'm just going to show a few videos because that enlightens in mind. I have some games here. We actually have 100 single-player games and 60 two-player games in the framework at the moment. It's quite large. This is some kind of space inversion. So it's called aliens. So basically, you are this guy on the bottom, and you have to shoot the aliens and basically kill them all before they reach. I have this game called Butterfly, where you have to collect all the butterflies. When a butterfly touches a cocoon, the cocoon opens, and if all the cocoons are open, you lose the game. You get points for capturing butterflies. As you can see, all games are 2D, and they have these physics in which you see from way from the top or from a side, and it's grid based physics, so it's a great allocation in the grid. You have a version of Pac-Man. Those here don't really move as Pac-Man, but still, it looks like Pac-Man. You have to collect all the pills around, and if you can keep those power pills, and you find the ghost with the power pills, and they run away, and you try to hit them again. It's probably classic Pac-Man. And there's a board game which is called Sequest, which is actually a version of a real game called Sequest, in which you have this submarine, you have to collect divers and take them up to the surface, while you avoid the very dangerous whales, piranhas, and sharks. So yeah, different kind of games. So if you think about how to create an AI that plays all these games at the same time, that's difficult. If you think that this AI has to play any games, even the ones that you haven't seen before, that's more difficult. Because that's more difficult, that's what we did. We just propose a competition and ask people to fix it and to do it. So we have the GBJ competition in this URL, and then we have different competitions. Games that are single player, games that are two player, games that are doing learning instead of planning. I can go into details on that involved. But in general, what we have is different sets of games. So all these sets of games are related sets, and then you have training sets, you know the games, you have validation sets, those are set in the website, and then you can submit and play it there, but you don't know the games. And the final results of the competition are actually computed in 10 games that are known. So the winner of the competition is the one that is the agent that plays best in the set of 10 games that are not known for the participants. So since 2014, we have seen a lot of things going on with the GBJ framework competition. We have actually just submitted a paper, which you can also find in archive, which is a survey of all the research that has been done in the last 3 years. We've been 70 papers published on that. So there's lots of people using this framework at the moment. The main takeaways that we say that are, well, the Monte Carlo methods and organized solution are probably the two methods that are used more often, and they have better results. But in general, there are so many games that are so different that one single algorithm is not able to win all games. In fact, it's very rare to see in competitions that an agent gets more than 50% victories. And in all papers that you see around, when they take into account more games, it's very difficult to see that one single approach is able to get more than 25%. In general, when you do AI, you like to see the 90s, the 80%, that gives you reason to do a paper, a conference, or a journal. Here, we just publish with 25%, 30%. When we say 40%, we're super happy. But yeah, that's the thing we do. So in general, one single algorithm doesn't really work, but heuristic approaches, so a higher level entity that decides this kind of game is good for this kind of agent, this kind of game is good for this kind of agent. That's the trend that we're seeing at the moment. Which seems to be better, but actually being able to classify games without seeing them before is also quite hard. And this part of the 70 papers is actually looking to that, to cluster games in different types, identify what things, what different things are common to games. We have also continuation tracks. The main thing I worry about that is a hard problem. It's a tracks in which we ask not to create agents, but create levels. So I give you a game that you know, and your generator needs to be able to create a level for that. I don't have time to go into detail for that either, but it's very hard. Okay, so I'm going to go into applications now. Why do we care? Well, actually, all these DVGA frameworks started in a taxi setting and included the thing. where a few people, actually one of them is here, decided they got together in a castle in Germany, and they decided to start this idea. And the idea is to say, well, in artificial general intelligence for games, you can imagine a scenario in which each game has its unique story involved, and the method in which this player interacts is exactly the same for all. And if we can achieve that, it's actually going to give us some insights in which how humans think about games. You start playing a new game tomorrow, and you already know a few things about games you can already play. So can we actually create agents that think in the same way? Well, that's the main goal, but actually there are further ideas that you can take from general video game into the games. So by this is a goal that could take decades, but what can we do in the games industry in the next 2-3 years? Well, one of the main advantages of doing this is that you are actually evolving the state of the art, advancing the state of the art in methods. Things like multi-type research, things like drawing evolution, drawing horizon evolution. These are methods that are general. They don't really attach, they're not really tailored to one particular thing. You can basically use it in different. And essentially, if you're able to evolve the state of the art in one particular agent, then you can do what I was talking about at the beginning. You can adjust your heuristics to that, and then make that AI stronger. So we are basically raising the bar into which the agents are doing to then apply to a particular domain and then be able to better. Now, some people have done work, and actually one of them is one of my students, done work in creating agents that do not try to win. Instead of creating an agent that tries to win, they try to do all the things in the game. You can do, for instance, the agent goes around and tries to interact with everything that is around, right? To interact with every other agent, or every other wall, or every other item that you can collect. You can make your agents try to find loopholes. You try to make the agent to win the game in a way that the designers of the game weren't thinking of. And essentially what this means is that this is some kind of automatic testing. Automatic testing can be done for apps, but it can also be done for games. You can have your agent playing your game, you play your level multiple times, and actually you can have one agent or multiple agents, when each one of these agents is a different thing. And this is an automatic way of testing your game and finding errors, bugs, loopholes. And all of these are general concepts. I'm pretty sure that when I was mentioning this, you are thinking in different games that you could have an agent testing. So actually, I'm talking about general ideas. If you have an agent that is able to play test any single game, then it can definitely play test the game that you're working. More things. You can also do human-like play. So one of the most interesting things in game AI, or actually in the development of games, is to have NPCs, non-playing characters, that are able to play like humans. That's actually one of the reasons why many people go online to play, because the AI that is building games is boring, or it's not interesting. But humans are actually more interested in playing games. So one of the main things that we're going to do is to have more human-like players, or human-like bots or AIs. So the question is, can we actually find concepts that are common across multiple games? Can we have a game where an agent is able to play like a human in multiple games? What are the main characteristics that make these agents play like humans? It's actually a very complex problem. But if you can create an agent that can be believable in any game, then by definition you can create an agent that can be believable in your game. So any advance in this direction is also good for particular games. And then what you have here is that if you actually have these agents that do different things, when I say perform here, not necessarily winning, it's playing like a human or play testing. If they can do well in any game, what you can do with this agent is to do a wider automatic testing, something which is called procedural content generation. So you can incorporate those agents in evaluating content that is procedural generated. PCG is this idea of you have just a system that generates content for you for a game. It could be a level, it could be rules for a game, it could be many different aspects of a game. So if you have agents that are able to evaluate procedurally generated content automatically, then you have a way to say if what you are generating is good or not. There are many ways of doing this AI-based game design, which is basically what this is about. And I'm just going to show one quick idea, which is called game parameterization. So we have all these games in the framework that I showed before. We have this test special language, and you probably didn't have time to actually read it, but all these rules and the sprite definition, they have numbers. You have things like the speed of some characters, or the probability that some characters have to shoot to be able to play. So we can take all those numbers, and in the process of designing a game, you tweak those numbers. And if you make the speed higher, maybe the game becomes faster, or probably becomes faster. If you are making the speed of the sprites faster, then the game becomes more difficult. So we can take all these different variables and tune them to change the speed. So we tried a quick experiment. Well, I say quick, it took a few weeks. And the idea is we have an agent and multiple research agents. So one of these agents that looks into the future to find out if possible states, future states are beneficial or not. And we try to do two simulations. So one agent is able to see very short in the future, so foresee the effects of applying 5 actions, and the other one can see very far in the future. So for instance, you say, you can simulate 20 actions in the future and see what happens after that. And then we say, well, let's try to take one of the games that you have seen before, Aliens, this spacing by the way, kind of game. Let's try to make a version of this game that is very good for one of the agents, a very bad for you. So actually we use evolution for this, we evolve a set of parameters, and the idea is let's try to get a game in which the agent that looks very far in the future plays very well, and the agent that looks very short in the future plays very bad. That's actually the easiest, because seeing far in the future gives you more a better idea of what's going to happen after you use it. This is actually the game that we got, or one of the games that we got. It's actually real speed, so it's not made faster. So this is a version of Aliens in which you can play very well if you see fire in the future. So it's a very difficult game. You see all these bullets that are going to kill you, they hit you. So basically, you have to, I guess I'll play the game. So you really need to kill all of them before that wall of bullets hit you. Otherwise, you lose. So unless you're able to see fire in the future, to see where to shoot, then you can't really win. Now the opposite, try to get one that is very short-sighted and where long-sighted individuals lose is the opposite experiment, and we got something like this, which is the same game with parameters. And in here, the ability is to actually be able to dodge all these people. So avoid being killed by enemies. Survive enough so you can kill all the different elements that they are close. So it's the same game, two different parameter sets, and you can use this agent. If the agent is not general enough to be able to play in any scenario, then it's very difficult to actually do it. Okay, so I'm just going to finish, probably I'm late. So just a summary, we are trying to get closer to artificial and general intelligence via games, via general game, via general video game. There are many frameworks that are being used. A is one of the most prolific ones. This one I haven't talked about is OpenGPI, which is kind of an umbrella of different frameworks. But GPI, at least, is the one that we're working on. In our field, is probably one of the most used at the moment, as that Samuel mentioned before. So. And the idea is to be able to advance the state-of-the-art in both in agents and also in PC, in generation of games, and also impact the gaming industry. We have different ideas of future work. For instance, we don't have 3D games, we don't have web compatibility to have people playing our games and see what happens. We want to do two-player learning, so try to extend this to learn how not only games work, but also how the other opponent that you're playing against is working. And also moving one step further to create automatic video game generation of complete games from scratch. That's something not as crazy as it sounds. It's already people that have created games completely from scratch using evolution. So that's one of the future. We're actually doing the London Games Festival this in a couple of weeks. So you want to know more about that. I'll be talking about this part of game design, AI-based game design. And that's all for me. If you want to talk to me, you can find me there and some links on this. Thanks.
Okay, hello, I'm Duygu Çakmak. I'm an AI programmer at Creative Assembly, and I develop AI systems and features for Total War series. Today, I will talk about the constraints associated with game development, game AI development, how at Creative Assembly we tackled development of game AI components, and how this sometimes can differ than more academic research approaches. That's an agent. So, when we try to develop an agent, an AI agent for any purpose, we usually want our AI agent to find the most optimal solution to the problem that we are trying to solve. For example, if you're trying to recognize some words from human speech, or if you're trying to minimize the errors in a production line, or if you're trying to find the best layout for the factory that we are trying to build, we always want our AI agents to find the most optimal or the best solution for our problem within AI research. As we have the same approaches in game AI, the solution that we are looking for is usually different. We don't want the most optimal solution. We want the fun solution. We want the challenging solution, but not an outsmarting one. So today, I will give you a bit about the standard approaches that we use to create our game AI opponents, and then I'll talk about how we create them to be fun and challenging. Before we start, I want to talk a little about our game. It is called Total War. It's a grand strategy game. I have some numbers for you just to give an idea. Our last 7 standalone titles have sold over like 15.8 million units. And over 1.2 million people play Total War every month. So it's like a big sort of game with a lot of different things. Yeah, anyway. So it's a grand strategy game. It has made out of 2 parts. The first part is turn-based campaign mode, and the second one is grand-scale battles. Today we will talk about the first part, because it would take too much time to talk about both, and I'm a campaign AI programmer, so I only know that part. So in the game, yes, the player plays the game as a faction. The goal of the game is to create a strong empire with strong economical power and with strong military power. It has a lot of things to think about. It has armies to maintain. It has regions to defend. It has other regions to attack. It has agents to use for actions. And finally, it has diplomacy to do diplomatic actions with other people. Every other faction in the game, apart from the player, has an AI. And it plays the game as if it is a player. So it makes all the decisions that the player has to make in a turn. So, as you might have guessed, there are a lot of decisions to make in the game. Like which regions to attack with which armies, which regions to defend which armies, what buildings to build to improve my economical power, or what is a good time to adopt an expansion strategy, or is it a good time to make some alliances because there is a big rising power on the world. And also, in the game there are a lot of factions, a lot of regions and armies at a given time. So, also, I forgot to mention that since it's a turn-based game, we have a lot of factions that decide, and we don't have much time because we can't make our players to wait for like 5 minutes to do the decisions. So it is basically a very time-restricted environment. So within this multi-search space, huge multi-search space, and with different decisions to give also, because there are different domains inside. It is not feasible to find one system with one solution, with one approach to find a good set of solutions. Yeah. Therefore, in Total War Campaign AI, we decided to make that problem smaller problems. We divided it into different decision domains, and then we started to solve those problems within its domain, and we created some systems for those to solve those problems within their domain. Sorry. Yeah. So, as we discussed, we have different things on the map, and we have different decisions to make. Depending on what we want to achieve, we could send our armies to attack the others, or we could defend our regions to strengthen our territories. So we have different decisions to make. So in the end, we have decided to divide this search space into 8 different subsystems. Yeah, I can say subsystems. So all these 8 different subsystems makes different decisions within each of its domains. Whilst they use different approaches and different algorithms, they are all depending on the world states. I want to mention one thing about the world state here. As we have a lot of different systems and very restricted time, we do a lot of optimizations in different places in the game. One of those is the world state, how we maintain our world state. In order to do that, in order to draw a clear picture of the world, we built a number of analyzers. These analyzers are in charge of keeping the world up to date. In order to do that efficiently, they use a technique called lazy evaluation. That means they only update the parts of the world whenever an AI decision subsystem needs them. So, for example, in a character management system, for whatever reason, if you don't have money, if you don't have action points at that turn, if we cannot do any character actions, then our analyzers wouldn't update that part of the game, of the world state. So that makes us gain a lot of time. I wanted to mention this because as game AI programmers, we are almost always bounded with time. And we really need to do optimizations, not only in our AI systems, but also all the supporting systems that we are using with. Okay, now let's go back to subsystems. I really don't like this microphone because I have a bit of a handshake and it doesn't help with my voice.
Do you want to try it now?
It sounds absolutely fine. It really sounds fine in the audience.
Oh, okay, because my hands are shaking all the time. I just...
We wouldn't know, it just sounds absolutely fine.
Okay. Because I called too much, they're just not stable. Anyways, it's much better like this.
Guys, can everybody hear okay? Yeah,
Okay,
let's
great.
keep it that way. Perfect.
Okay, so we decided to divide our system or problem into 6 different small domains. And then we decided to solve those problems within each of those. And they're all related to its decision domains. I'm not going to talk about all the subsystems today because we don't have time. But I picked 2 of them to compare the differences and the similarities between more academical AI and more industrial AI. Game AI. The first system I will talk about is the diplomacy system. First, let's talk about a bit the game mechanics. So through diplomacy, one faction can declare war, or negotiate peace, or make trade agreements with the other factions, or form alliances, and so on. Diplomacy is done through deals. A deal can contain different treaties, positive or negative treaties, I can say, or having gifts, or giving gifts, and so on. So the problem this subsystem is trying to solve is to find favorable deals to that faction, and also to accept or reject or counteroffer the deals that we are already offered. So if we think about a standard approach to deal with this problem in a non-game domain, most probably we would select a state-of-art algorithm, such as, I don't know, if we choose a genetic algorithm, we could generate a generation of deals, and then we would evaluate, and then we would cross over, mutate, and repeat until we find the optimal deal. That would be our solution. Or if we were to choose a multi-objective optimization technique to find the Pareto optimal, and then we would choose our solution from there, that would be an optimal solution as well. But here, I want to mention one thing. Evaluating a deal is a very expensive process, as it depends on a lot of things from the world, such as attitude analysis we need to do. Because I forgot to mention one thing. So in the game, when we decide if a deal is good or not, there are like very different things that we consider. For example, I should be thinking about if I want to declare war on someone, what would my allies think about me? Because maybe they really like that faction and it would cause a problem to me later. Or how treacherous I would become if I would break a treaty that I signed a few times ago. So all these things, all these sort of things, are done by very expensive analysis, such as I need to look at my attitude analysis, I need to look at my stances between factions and so on. So, evaluating a deal is a very expensive process. Going back, whilst those two approaches that I just talked about might find the optimal solutions for us, but they would be computationally very intensive. Therefore, it would be not feasible for us to use those given our time restrictions. So, instead of doing those, our approach is not to find the optimal solution, but find a good enough solution that is relevant to our factions. In order to do that, we need to be able to reduce the number of deals that we evaluate. And it is very important where we start our search in order to reduce the number of deals that we will evaluate. For that, we generate a big list of deals that are available to that faction. And then we use our designer's domain knowledge to assign some priorities to those deals. Every faction in the game has a personality, such as a faction might be aggressive, or a faction might be defensive, or some factions might value money over the other things. So, based on those personality values, factions' personalities, we assign some base priorities to each of those deals. And then we further adjust those numbers with things from the world, such as how close those two factions that I'm doing a deal with, or what are their attitudes towards each other, and so on. So this value, this personality-based priority value is actually basically only an approximation on a higher granularity level, what the potential of that field is to that function. Then we sort all these deals, and we hope that the deals that has the higher priorities will be more interesting and will be better solutions. Then we start evaluating them one by one until we reach a small threshold. Then we filter the good deals, and then we make a random weighted selection among those, and the result is our solution. A good deal here is a deal with a positive evaluation value. Once this method does not guarantee us to find the optimal solutions, it usually gives us an interesting, a fun, a relevant solution to that faction. And as we don't evaluate a lot of deals, it is much less time intensive than the previous approaches that we have talked about. Yes. The second system I will be talking about is the task management system. This system is actually of particular interest because it uses a known technique called multi-target research, and we applied it effectively to a AAA game. Its domain is army-related decisions. Again, let's talk about the dynamics a little bit first. Every faction in the game has armies, navies, or agents. We call them resource mobiles. Every resource mobile can execute a number of different tasks, such as going from a region to another, recruiting units in a region, defending a region, attacking to another army, and so on. Depending on what we want to achieve, we could just send our armies to fight with the enemy, or sail out our navies to find new territories to expand. Or we could send one particular army to one particular region to recruit some specific units to improve the quality of our armies. So the problem that the task management AI system is trying to solve is to find relevant tasks to that faction, to allocate resources to those tasks, and then make a good plan for those tasks. So we mentioned there are a lot of armies, regions, factions in the game that results in a vast search space. And also, when I talked about the problem, I actually stated 3 different problems: generating the tasks, allocating resources to those tasks, and then coordinating, making a plan and coordinating among those. So given the search space and different problems to solve, we actually decided to divide this system into 3 subsystems. The first one is the task generation. A task is an action that a resource mobile can take. For example, raiding a region, or recruiting in a region, or attacking to an army, and so on. So task generation system is responsible to generate a number of tasks available to those factions. And similar to the dependency system, it also assigns some priorities to those tasks based on the faction's personality. And those priorities are used to assist resource allocation system. Now that we generated a number of tasks, and we have some resource mobiles, then the problem becomes how to assign those resources to the tasks. Our resource allocation system uses an MCTS-based technique to allocate those resources to those tasks. Also, there are different variables it uses, such as the spatial information of armies, the strength of the armies, and so on to make our search a bit meaningful. When we use MCTS, it's a little bit different than the standard usage. In the standard technique, what we do is every node represents a state of the world, and then every transition is possible actions. Then we do a playout until the end of the game, and then we score each node based on how many wins we have versus how many losses we have in that playout. How we use it is every node in our tree represents an action of resource fulfilling. Then we build our tree by allocating resources to the tasks, and our playout ends when there are no longer available resources to the tasks, or vice versa. And then we score based on how many tasks we allocated and how important they are, versus how many tasks we failed to allocate and how important they are. As MCTS is a good trade-off between using the best known solutions versus finding potential better solutions, it is a good fit to our problem. Also, as we can stop the search at any time and still use the solutions, it is very good for our resource allocation system because of the given time restrictions of our game. So the final one is the resource coordination. Now we have the tasks allocated with some resources. Then the problem becomes how to make a plan for those tasks and how to possibly coordinate between different resource mobiles, because we would want to maybe use the same resource mobiles at the same place to reinforce each other and make better collaborations in between. So our resource coordination system uses a lot of different AI systems we have, such as pathfinders or influence maps or threat maps and so on. And then it uses an MCTS-based planner to find the best plan for those tasks and find the good coordination in between. I won't bore you with the details of MCTS anymore, but I want to mention one more thing. MCTS usually manages to find really good solutions for our resource coordination problem. Sometimes too good. For example, and also, those too good solutions tend to frustrate our players. For example, MCTS tends to stop the armies just outside of the reach of the player. Whilst for an AI, it is very easy to compute and a totally legitimate move. For human eye, we are not that precise, so we cannot really calculate it that well. So when the player wants to chase down an army, it cannot, because it's just outside of the reach. And then they just start writing on the forums and it goes bad. Yeah. Anyway, in order to stop that, we needed to introduce some sort of element of error in our system, so that at some cases it still happens, so people feel challenged, but at others it won't happen, so that they feel achieved. So, yeah, optimal solution doesn't always mean the fun solution that we want to achieve in games. Yes, so I tried to talk about two different systems we have. The first one is the diplomacy system that uses a non-standard AI approach. And the second one uses a bit more academical approach. To sum up, so in games, we don't always go for the optimal solutions. We try to find different ways to find the more fun and more challenging solutions. We usually divide and conquer our massive search spaces and solve and improve, develop different systems to solve the problems within smaller search spaces. It is a good idea to use domain information, such as we did with the faction personalities, to direct and limit our search. It is also a good idea to use the state-of-art techniques, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel all the time, but where appropriate, because of the domains they might not be applicable all the time for us. And also, we are almost always restricted with time limitations, so we need to optimize wherever and whenever possible. That's all. Thank you very much.